Before we start, warning, spoilers ahead. Today, I'm going to explain a 2004 American science fiction and romance movie called Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. The movie begins with a lonely man named Joel Barish who wakes up from his sleep and lives his boring life as an office worker. Turns out that day is Valentine's Day, where people are celebrating with their lovers or at least buying a beautiful flower for their loved ones. Still that day, the single Joel somehow decides not to go to work and impulsively takes a train out to Montauk. He wishes that he could meet someone new, but it seems impossible as he is incapable of making eye contact with strangers. At a bistro, a blue-haired young woman catches Joel's eye and he starts drawing her in his sketchbook secretly. They take the same train and coincidentally sit on the same corridor. The woman realizes that she is being stalked and decides to start a conversation with Joel. She introduces herself as Clementine and discovers that they are going to the same destination, Rockville Center. The young woman tries so hard to keep the conversation going, but Joel is just that kind of boring man that does not know how to reply to a conversation. Long story short, Joel comes across Clementine, who is walking home, and he offers her a ride home. The young woman invites him to have a drink together, which he agrees to. Joel reveals that he is kinda closed-mouthed because his life isn't that interesting. However, she loves him the way he is and suddenly tells him that she is going to marry him. She also asks him out on a date. Joel feels that everything is going too fast, so he leaves and returns home. Before he goes, Clementine gives her phone number to him and urges him to call her as soon as he reaches home. Upon arrival, Joe immediately calls her and he agrees to go for a date with her. The next day, they spend their night together on a frozen lake where Joel shows off his knowledge about astronomy to his lover. After that, he drives Clementine home, but she wants to come over to Joel's house. While she goes to take her stuff, suddenly a stranger shows up, asking if there's something he can help, but then goes away. The scene jumps back to a moment when Joel is crying in despair. A few moments later, he tosses a cassette tape out the window as he drives. Turns out that Joel just broke up with Clementine. The scene moves to several days ago when he tells his friends that Clementine looked at him like she didn't even know who he was and she already had a new boyfriend called Patrick. Rob hands him over a letter from Lacuna, a company that specialized in memory erasing, revealing that Clementine has had Joel erased from her memory, and that is the reason why she didn't recognize him anymore. He then goes to Lacuna to clarify things. The administration officer, Mary, orders him to fill out some form, and it is revealed that memory erasing procedure is quite popular in the city. The doctor in charge, Dr. Mierzwiak, reveals that Clementine was not happy and wanted to move on. Heartbroken, Joel breaks into the doctor's room the following day and requests to undergo the same procedure as his ex-girlfriend. After that, Dr. Mierzwiak asks him to collect everything that has some association with Clementine, as they will be used to create a map of her in his brain, and the technicians will erase her entirely from his life while he is sleeping. He gathers the stuff and comes back to Lacuna. With the help of Stan, one of the technicians, they commence with brain mapping procedure, asking Joel to recall the memories when he sees a certain item. Joel then returns home. As he reaches the mailbox, his neighbor Frank asks Joel whether he has arranged a Valentine's Day plan with Clementine. With an unhappy face, he says that he has not planned anything and immediately heads to his room. He then takes a pill, turns off all the lights, and suddenly passes out. Outside the house, two Lacuna technicians called Patrick and Stan sneak in quietly and install the memory erasing device to the sleeping Joel. The memory erasing procedure commences and Joel wakes up in his mind. He finds himself in Dr. Mierzwiak's room while seeing himself and the others are doing the brain mapping procedure. Then he jumps to memories where his relationship with the orange-haired Clementine is falling apart. Joel gets angry at her because he gets home late and was driving drunk, but she claims that he is freaked out because he thinks that Clementine was sleeping with another man. Joel confirms it. Disappointed, Clementine walks away from the house and the memory slowly fades as the room turns black. He chases after her and yells at her, saying that he is erasing her and he is happy with that decision while the memory is falling apart. In the present time, the two unprofessional technicians start drinking and talking about their girlfriend. Stan tries to focus on the work, but Patrick keeps distracting him. He tells Stan that he falls in love with one of the patients they took care of previously. He also admits that he stole her panties, which makes Stan disgusted, saying it is an unethical action. Not long after, Mary arrives in Joel's room and immediately heads over to his kitchen to find a whiskey. As the previous memory has been erased, Joel jumps to another memory where he is eating noodles with the same orange-haired Clementine. Even though the event takes place in Joel's mind, he can still hear the conversation of the technicians in the present. He tells her about Patrick stealing her underwear, but she doesn't believe him. At some point, Clementine wants to have a baby, but Joel denies the request as they are not ready mentally. Jumping to another memory of the orange-haired Clementine, she is disappointed because it seems like Joel doesn't trust her and does not tell a single thing about him to her. They have an argument and blame each other. Clementine gets angry and wants to end the relationship. Patrick receives a call from his upset girlfriend and wants to visit her while the procedure is in process. However, Stan allows him to go since it is a golden opportunity for him to be with Mary. The unprofessional Lacuna's employees stop monitoring Joel and start dancing on the patient's bed. It is then revealed that Patrick's upset girlfriend is actually Clementine, and he tries to impress her by imitating Joel. He keeps Joel's stuff that is related to Clementine and rereads it when he is lost. Clementine invites him to go to the frozen lake. Joel finally jumps to a good memory of red-haired Clementine, where they are spending their quality time together in the bed and on the frozen lake. However, all of them are slowly erased. At this point, he regrets his decision and wants to call off the procedure, but it is just too late and it can't be undone. Stan and Mary are going crazy and don't care about their patient anymore. On the other side, Patrick is having fun with the blue-haired Clementine on the frozen lake and tries to do what Joel was doing at that moment. However, the woman suddenly wants to go home. On their way, Patrick says several of Joel's ultimate phrases to cheer her up, but it fails. Since no one is responding to him, he tries to run away with red-haired Clementine, hoping that he can stop the memory erasing process. He recalls several good memories of her and brings Clementine there, but they start disappearing one by one. He realizes that he must find a way to avoid the procedure before waking up or he will completely forget her. Clementine suggests he wakes himself up and it works for a second, but it's useless as he couldn't move. After that, he attempts to bring her somewhere in the memory where she doesn't belong, which is his childhood memories. They go to Joel's 4-year-old memory, and it works for a moment. This halts the procedure, which makes Stan panic. He then calls Dr. Mierzwiak, who eventually comes over to Joel's house. He is quite surprised when he sees Mary in the room. The doctor analyzes the situation and manages to bring Joel back to the predetermined mind map, causing Joel to open his eyes for a moment. He sedates him, and the process continues. While working, Mary keeps praising the doctor and seems impressed with him. Filled with jealousy, Stan walks out of the building to get some fresh air. As soon as he goes, Mary approaches the doctor and kisses him. She reveals that she has loved him for a very long time. However, Mr. Mierzwiak already has a family, and it is impossible to maintain a relationship with her. Joel and the red-haired Clementine get back to the good memories, this time to the moment when they are watching a movie together in a car, but everything starts disappearing. He attempts to hide her somewhere deeper in the humiliating memories, but, as expected, everything is slowly fading. Not long after, the doctor's wife comes to the building and spots her husband kissing his secretary. She is very disappointed and drives away. The doctor reveals that they have history, and Mary had taken the procedure to remove the doctor from her memory. Mary immediately goes to the office and finds a tape cassette of her testimony before getting her memory erased. Joel then jumps to a good memory, where both of them are having fun in the bookstore, but the girl suddenly disappears. All good memories of red-haired Clementine are now completely deleted. The scene jumps to a moment when Joel sees Clementine for the first time. It is when he and his friends are going on a vacation to a beach. He is not interested in kite flying and suddenly is approached by a green-haired Clementine. However, he realizes that this is just a memory and it will be gone soon, so they decide to just enjoy the last moment of the memory. They sneak into the unoccupied bungalow where they say their last goodbye, and Clementine tells him to meet her at Montauk as soon as he wakes up. At this point, the memory erasing procedure is finished and all Lacuna's employees leave the room. Joel wakes up from his sleep, completely forgetting Clementine. The disappointed Mary resigns from the company while Stan approaches her and confesses his feelings to her. She decides to mail cassette tapes of all Lacuna's patients back to them, including Joel and Clementine. After that, we are brought to the very first scene of the movie, where Joel impulsively takes a train to Montauk and meets Clementine again after she is erased. The scene then continues when the blue-haired Clementine returns to the car after taking her stuff. She then opens the letter from Mary and plays the cassette tape. It is revealed that before deciding to delete her memory, Clementine wanted to break up with Joel because he was a boring person. She confessed to the doctor that she didn't like herself when she was with him. They are confused when hearing the recording since both of them have had their memories erased. Clementine walks out of the car and heads to the room while crying in despair. On the other side, Joel also receives the cassette tape and learns the truth. At the end of the movie, Clementine approaches Joel and both of them decide to start over again. Subscribe to watch more videos like this